The coins from Kuhna-Chinor, castle from the vicinity of Panjikent. I will try to build some kind of chronology based on those coins, and not only on them, but also on whatever stratigraphic sequences are available to us and other materials also available to us. So the plan is to show you the castle, which we're talking about, its position in space, and its plan, its architecture, and everything else. And apart from the castle, there is also a funeral building called Sogdian Naus. And then we will go to closer examination of coins, which gonna be three main categories: excavated in the trench, excavated during the metal detecting around the site, and the coins which are allegedly from the site, are said to be from there, but we don't really know if they actually are. And then some conclusions and maybe a proposition of a hypothesis which we can try to prove or disprove in the next research. So first of all, this is the site of Kuhna-Chinor. It's green and nice, not like we usually see it in the summer. This is an April photo. And it is located pretty close to Panjikent. And Panjikent, I guess I don't need to introduce. But Kuhna-Chinor is just a bit around 8 kilometers to the south, along the Chinor Brook, and it's on one of the highest hills on that brook. And you can actually see Panjikent from the highest peak of this hill. And also, if you know where to look, you can see Kuhna-Chinor from Panjikent too. The history of research is not very complex for that particular site. It has been documented probably by Smirnova in 1948, and then excavated, not published, by Sokov and Ishankulov in the 70s and maybe 80s. And they left some dugouts in the site and then looted recently, and the finds were brought to Dushanbe, to the Museum of National History, to our revered partner in Dushanbe, Muhsin Bobmoloyev, who actually introduced this site to us, and because of whom we started to excavate this wonderful castle. So this is how it looks like on the more close-up plan overlaid on the Google map. You see the central castle right on the highest peak, and then there are some terraces sloping down. And to the southwest, there is the burial ground with several funeral buildings, houses, and we have tried to collect all the material from the fields here, here, and here, and from the terraces just by picking it by hands. And from the upper terraces, we also collected the materials by metal detecting. So what we have already done is the surveys, some excavations. We started archaeological analysis. We started paleobotanic analysis. This will be eventually available. We didn't finish yet the excavations. We tried to export the samples. We didn't succeed yet. But we do have some DNA analysis from the Nauses. We do have some DNA analysis of human remains from the burial ground, which is much later. Right on the site, there is a Muslim cemetery, which is much later. And we would like to have some other analysis too, including C14 and palynology. So we tried to design this research as multifaceted as possible. So why even talking about that to you numismatists? Because this is so much, pretty much very archaeological. Because, well, we have here a wonderful thing which we try to investigate. First of all, a wonderful stratigraphy. And in this stratigraphy, spanning from 8th century to 20th century, we have many coins involved. And coins, even though they're not exactly excavated, but they are from around the site, and we know them, we know the exact places where they are excavated from, not in the trench though. They still serve as basis for chronology for that site. And we will apply that coin-based chronology and try to lay it with ceramic-based chronology, C14, if possible, and under chronology, if possible, because there is one at least sample which we would like to actually analyze. So first of all, how this looks like. It looks like that. The very good preservation. This is about 5 meters. The walls are standing. This is a very rare thing, which is a staircase with at least 3 floors attested. And this is not something you see every day in Central Asian archaeology. The preservation just generally is really good at the site with a very nice stratigraphy. Just to show you some pics. This is also not a very often thing to be met. This is a nicely preserved vault of a whole room. And again, the staircase, close up, and the nice intruders, probably late Islamic, starting at least from the 15th century. On the site were buried here, and those are pretty many, at least 6 by now, as far as I remember, and there are more. We tried to include them as well. Here is how it looks like after the excavations of season 2 in 25. And you can see that this is a shape similar to Filmandar, with a central corridor and 3 rooms on each side, at least 3, with probably 4 towers on the corners. Like, we do have 2 rooms on the corners, 1, 2. We probably have 1 here. We must have 1 here. And the rooms are also attested. We'll finish it, I hope so, next year or the year after that. And you can see the sections, the section which goes right here, that, and the section which goes right here. And you see the nice staircase. And one important thing to be noted about the technology with which it was built is the weird way they built the staircase, in which is covered by the vault, which is not usual for Panjikent and for Chilhujra, for Sogdian architecture generally, and which doesn't include the usage of trompe or other way of turning the vault. And it is basically bluntly built in short sequences, starting from here to here, and then this one goes from here to here, and then you basically abut the above vault on the one which is below. So you have to use much more brick. This is less sophisticated and probably more dangerous technique to have, but easier to build. So it's probably a sign of rurality on that site and the skill of the workers. Even though the pachsa and the bricks are wonderful, their usage of the bricks is not as wonderful as in Panjikent. So again, about stratigraphy, it's variable. Here, it's basically almost 1 layer. This is all just brick collapse, but the neighboring one has lots and lots of floors. Like, this is maybe 14th, 15th century. This is probably much later. Those are the floors of the beginning of the existence. Concerning the beginning of the existence, well, I would like to finally get to the interesting part, to the numismatics. Coins will be distinguished by the find spot. There are several found in the trench, controlled. We do know they are from there. Those are only 4. 2 found from the castle and 2 found from the naus, from the funeral construction. Then there are control coins, which we found by mapped metal detecting. Those are about 13, plus a small hoard of silver dirhams. Controlled metal detecting, but no mapping. Those are 9. And then uncontrolled metal detecting by whoever, we don't know those people, who said that those coins are coming from this particular space, from the site, around the site. We don't really know. We can presume they may have been collected from various places in Tajikistan too. This is not excluded. Now, getting to the material. The first coin, Turgesh, 712, 737, something like that. In the brackets, I show the name of the identificator. Who identified this coin? There are 2 main and 1 additional. Pavel Luria, PL, and Alexander Naimark, who identified some of those coins at 2 a.m. yesterday. This one is found in the brick collapse, in the whatever is left from the entrance to room 2. The collapse would have entered from room 4, probably from the collapsed vault. And it would have broken the vault over the passage to room 2, and thus the Turgesh coin would have been probably interred there during the process of collapsing, and hence it would have been probably, we don't know that for real, becoming from the construction of the vault of the building, even though you can count how many stages I built in this sandcastle. The second coin is Bukhar Hudat Muhammad, early 9th century, found from the floor of the staircase. Right here, you can see it on the photograph of our partner Muhsin, which is coming right from here, from the first march of the staircase, from the first passage of the staircase or leg. And so it means that if Turgesh allegedly is from the collapse and hence from the construction, it means that the Turgesh is coming from the time when the castle was being constructed, was being built. The Bukhar Hudat from the floor means that it probably was left there, lost there, during the time of occupation, or even more likely, closer to the time of abandonment. Another chronological marker for the site is ceramics. Here I only collected the ceramics from the bifloor or floor layers. So those are all coming from the abandonment time, the closer to the abandonment time. And the most striking form is those nice wheel-shaped cauldrons, which usually are dated to 9th to 10th centuries. What do we have for the site? We have the ceramics from the bifloor layers, dating to 9th, 10th centuries. We have the building technique, which is in general very typical of Panjikent, but a bit rural, like with this weird technique of laying up the vault. So wide range from 700 to 800, easy. Bukhar Hudat on the floor, probably beginning of the 9th century. Turgesh in the collapse, either construction or abandonment, starting from 740s onwards. So most probable time for the construction of the castle would be from 740s onwards, probably finishing at 800. Now we come to the naus. First of all, I would like to show you the construction of the naus, because this is pretty typical for Sogdian architecture. The naus itself, it's a funeral building, and this one is pretty small. Like this is the whole building. Those are the one row of bricks visible. And here is probably the collapse of this particular building. Yes, the first coin in this funeral building found in situ, very close to a part of the skull, this one and the rib, and so everything which belongs to some kind of human being, right on the bench of the naus and close to the start of the collapse. It was probably put in the mouth of the skull and then, well, just put in the ossuarium and left there. The second is coming from this white part. We actually found it in the thrown away soil in the backfill, but we do know that this backfill comes from here. So it's probably from the collapse. Hence, it's also, well, it's been there. It's the same coin, also Belge, as this one, and probably was also used in funerary context in the mouth of the skull. Then come 4 coins around the naus, but they are very closely collected, very close to it. So it's probably from the naus too, but collected a year before in 24 with controlled metal detecting. And so there is Samarkand double portrait, Fiknan, early 8th century. There is another Belge. There is early Bukhar Hudat, but silver, so pretty wide date. And one Bukhar Hudat al-Mahdi, at least starting from 708. There are good ossuaria from the naos, pretty nice, also spanning from 700 to 800 about the tongue or imitation of the tongue mirror, also coming from this particular funeral building, which is probably closer to the 9th century, the beginning of the 9th century, so something like that, with a nice earring too, but about that I cannot say anything. Chronological markers of the naos. We do have 4 coins dating to the early 8th century. So this is probably the time when the naos was built, and first dwellers were put there. They were put there between 700 and 720. Then comes Bukhar Khudat al-Mahdi, who, well, could not have come there in 720s, so he must have come there in 780s, and maybe this is just like a hypothesis, together with the tongue mirror, because they probably cluster together chronologically. Now we go to the control detected coins. They come from around the site, mostly on the upper terraces. This is handpicked, and there are not many, and a small dirham hoard. They also can be put in between several categories. The first category, 2 coins of the beginning of the 8th century, then late 8th century, widely dated, and 10th, 11th century. The last category is not present in the castle and in the naos. So here we do have basically 3 main chronological horizons. First one of the building of the naos, the beginning of the 8th century, then the usage and the life of the castle, late 8th century, and probably the castle could have been used until the 10th century, as ceramics suggest to us. So the latest extent of our coins is 10th, maybe 11th century. Here, some close-up of the coins which are found on the map. Close up, if you want to look. And the small dirham hoard. As you can see, there are at least different ways of writing ligatures, like this is pretty smooth, this is very different. So they do not come from the same particular time. We don't have identifications yet, so maybe this would be a task for you. And I would be very glad to get. And some just contexts for the metal detecting around the site. So we do have some usmadone, we do have some buckles, we do have some weird stuff, we do have some arrowheads, and just metal trash, as well as lots of ceramics. This is how it looks like in general. Finally, we come to the last category of coins, the coins said to be coming from Kuhna-Chinor. Those are all Bukhar Khudats we have, and 1 Peroz, mostly again dating to the late 8th century, 740s maybe, and Peroz is an outlier. Then some Panjikent coins, België, Turgar, België, Lady of Panjikent, also mostly clustering in the beginning of the 8th century. There is 1 Kayuan Tungbao, probably an imitation because it's bad, but still. Some later coins from late 8th century, beginning of the 8th century, again, België, Shushpir. We do have those ones as well, again, with some wide dates, some a bit outlying, so 9th century, and 1 complete outlier is Huvishka imitation identified by Lauren Morris and confirmed by Alexander Naimark. I don't know what actually this Huvishka is doing here. Maybe this one is actually brought from somewhere else in Tajikistan. We don't really know. And some late, uninteresting Timurid coins. We don't really even think about them. What's the distribution of those coins? The distribution is mostly like that. We do have some early Sogdian. The Ginov Church is not really early Sogdian, sorry. More or less like that. And it does align with the categories we do have from excavations and controlled metal detecting in at least those 2 largest chronological horizons. The beginning of the 8th century, when the naos was there, and then starting with the 740s and to the late 8th century, this is the next stage when probably the castle was built and then slowly used and fell into disuse at the end or sometime in the 10th century. The late outliers, Timurid, probably belong to the later occupation of the castle and around. Those ones, well, they happen. Finally, closing it all up, we do have some chronology to be concluded out of that. We do have early 8th century being the activity when the naus was built, so some life was existing there. And this was the time when Panjikent was at its height. This is the time when Devashtich ruled, and we know that he at least claimed to be the king of Samarkand, so this is probably when things really happened around. But then in 722, Panjikent is no more for 18 years. And in 740s, people come back. And they may have also come back for some reason to the brook of Chinor and built the castle there for some reason. Then this castle was used along with the naus, actually, along with the burial ground, until 10th century. We do not know what is the date of the latest Sogdian burials. There are others. There are other nauses. This is not the only one. So there may be some later dates. Then this is like when the latest coins happen. This is when the 780s Bukhar Khuda, together with the tongue mirror, is interred into the naus. Then it falls into disuse. In 14th, 15th centuries, probably there is some inhabitants by later occupants. You would have seen that on the sections, the second big floor. And then after 15th century, we probably have some Muslim burials. We cannot yet date them properly, but we hope to do that by dendrochronology because one of them was covered by Archatri. Based on that chronology, there is maybe a hypothesis to be proposed and then to test. In the early century, Panjikent probably could have served as a religious and as a market center for the whole mountainous Zarafshan Valley. This would be the place where people would have come from the plain, from the Samarkand plain and general plain Sogdiana, to buy, to distribute some resources brought from the mountains. So it would be wood, it would be minerals, something like that. It would be probably some kind of attested skins and leather products. Then 722 is destroyed again. And in 740s, the people come back and they need to establish the new connections. So the castle in Kuhna-Chinor is some kind of new connection which they build to reestablish the resource flow, to funnel the resources better to Panjikent market and then to bring it further to the plain. 770s, Panjikent is dead. It's no more inhabited. People from the Panjikent as a Sogdian town move to other places, and probably at this point it loses its value as a market center, but we don't really know about it. And then people live in the castle until it just becomes crumpy. And then they abandon it and maybe go to better places, actually to Panjikent as it is now, because we do have Panjikent starting in the lowlands from the 9th century onward, and this would be when the castle is actually abandoned. And then later things happen, not interesting. And thank you for your attention.